What's happening, everybody? It's Sean with Reactions to the Classics, and today we have a full album reaction for the first time somehow of Frank Sinatra, A Swingin' Affair, brought to us by a friend, longtime supporter and patron of the channel, Doug. Thank you, Doug. Appreciate you. Appreciate all the patrons who make this thing go. You'd like to support us in any way, check out that Patreon link below, the Patreon link on the end screen. We truly would not make it without the patrons. We got over 2,500 videos up, and a lot of those are courtesy of those patrons. All right, there's not a lot on this album, right? But there's a lot on almost every single song. So I'm gonna give you a little bit of background on the songs when we get to them. But this is his 12th studio album for Frank. Went to #1 in the UK. It's sometimes mentioned as a sequel to Songs for Swingin' Lovers. And just a little note, there's 15 songs on the original. There's 16 songs on the expanded and everything you're gonna find. The Lady is a Tramp was bumped from the original album and replaced with No One Ever Tells You, which had been recorded months earlier. Later, The Lady's a Tramp appeared on the soundtrack for Pal Joey. It was restored to the album for the CD release. And hey, Doug didn't say whether he wanted me to do the original or the expanded, but since the expanded is only one more song, we're doing The Lady is a Tramp. Now, if you haven't been with us before, the music will not be in the video, but it's going to be at a Vimeo link below. So click on that so you can listen along to the music with us. All right, let's jump into it with the first track, Night and Day, written by the legendary Cole Porter, written for the 1932 musical Gay Divorce. It's perhaps Porter's most popular contribution to the Great American Songbook. Now that's saying something right there. It's been recorded by dozens of musicians, with Fred Astaire being the first. NPR says, quote, within 3 months of the show's opening, more than 30 artists had already recorded the song. It was a top-selling record of 1933. It was so associated with Cole that when Hollywood filmed his life story in 1946 with Cary Grant, the movie was entitled Night and Day. Now, Frank recorded this song at least 5 times, including with Axel Stordahl in his first solo session in 1942, and again with him in 1947, with Nelson Riddle, which is this version for this album, with Don Costa in 1961 for Sinatra's and Strings. And I don't know, man, I'm going to have to seek this out just out of almost morbid curiosity. A disco version with Joe Beck in 1977. A very, very important song, though, for Frank, because when Harry James heard Frank sing this song, he signed him. And that 1942 version did reach number 16 in the US. I'm going to have the lyrics up as always. Thanks again, Doug. Night and Day. Fantastic, obviously, backing. And I don't know who the bands are in any of this stuff, so I wished I did, but I don't. That info is not really clear. There's a little bit of it in a few of the liner notes that I read, but it's not really crystal clear, and I want to mess it up, so I just won't mention it. But just fantastic. I mean, I don't know a lot of Frank stuff. I have a few reactions up on here. The late, great Poet GB brought a couple Sinatra reactions. But I did watch, and I mentioned this to Doug when I answered him on Patreon, I did watch a 4-hour Netflix doc. Well, it's on Netflix, on Sinatra, maybe last year or the year before. It's just a fascinating guy, right? And when I was younger, I hated songs like this, right? I hated the old standards and all of this stuff. Like, as I get older, I super enjoy it, man. It's just another time and another place. And just great stuff. Next up, we have I Wish I Were in Love Again from Richard Rodgers and Warren's Hart. It is a show tune from the 1937 Rodgers and Hart musical Babes in Arms. It was omitted from the 1939 film version. Judy Garland and Mickey Rooney performed it in the 1948 film Woods and Music, and they released it as a single in 1948 as a B-side with Johnny One Note. I Wish I Were in Love Again. A nicely written song. You know, a lot of times these songs are super simple, but a lot of the standards aren't super simple like a lot of the early rock songs, which came, 20, 30, 35 years later. They're actually written at a higher level just because they were written for musicals and things like that where they got to tell a story. That's why you find like the writing and music is pretty good with this stuff, and then it really drops off to simplistic stuff, and then it takes Dylan and the boys to kind of, Woody Guthrie to kind of reignite it on up, but a well-written song. I liked it. I don't like it as well as Night and Day because I like the punchier Frank where he's really going in, but did a really good job on it. I mean, the story's as old as Father Time. He's not only saying he wishes he was in love again because he enjoyed it, but he's also saying he gets the things that were kind of bad about it, right? And how in the moment you kind of want to get away from those things. And once you do, you just wish you could go back to it. So pretty well done. Next up, we got I Got Plenty of Nuttin'. DeBose Hayward, George Gershwin, and Ira Gershwin, sung by the character Porgy from George Gershwin's 1935 folk opera Porgy and Bess. The lyrics are by DeBose Hayward, the author of the novel Porgy, on which the opera is based, and Ira Gershwin. It's been recorded by hundreds of singers and music groups, including Bing Crosby in 1936, Ella Fitzgerald and Louis Armstrong in 1957, the same time that this came out, and Pearl Bailey in 1959. All right, he's got plenty of nothing, so he didn't need walks on the doors like the rich people, right? But he's got his gal, he's got his song, and he's got heaven the whole day long, so he doesn't need anything else. really well done. I thought that obviously the orchestra and the brass section in particular lend a lot to this song. But Frank can sing anything, man. The great critic Robert Christgau, who's one of the toughest critics around, did a lot of stuff with the Village Voice, especially back in the 60s and 70s. But fantastic critic. He called Sinatra the greatest singer of the 20th century. That is not faint praise, because Robert does not give faint praise. Next up, we have I Guess I'll Have to Change My Plan by Arthur Schwartz and Howard Dietz. It was published in 1929. It's famously performed by Fred Astaire and Jack Buchanan in the 1953 musical film The Bandwagon. Great performance on that one, right? I mean, Frank was hitting some of those notes. The song's about he was in love with this girl. He kind of didn't consider the option that there could be another guy involved, but he figured that out. So he's going to have to change his plan. But even though Frank doesn't write any of these songs, what he's got is believability, right? He's so smooth and confident that you believe that he wrote it, that he's singing it from his heart. And that, while that sounds simplistic, it's very hard to pull off. And that's why a lot of artists struggle who didn't write the songs that they are singing. So fantastic. Next up, we have Nice Work, If You Can Get It. Popular song and jazz standard composed by George Gershwin with lyrics by Ira Gershwin. It's one of 9 songs the Gershwin brothers wrote for the movie A Damsel in Distress, and which is performed by Fred Astaire, backing vocals by the Stafford sisters. A version of this song was used during the opening credits of the 1995 to 1998 CBS sitcom Sybil, who performed the song. So if you recognize it, that might be where you recognize it from. Nice Work, If You Can Get It. Just so smooth, man. So well done. Telling her different ways she can be with him. It's nice work if you can get it. But man, you can really feel Frank's confidence on this one. And obviously the band is on point, but I can see why that song is streamed so much. I'm not saying it's better than some of the other songs on here. It's just this whole album so far, we're 5 of the 16 songs through, is absolutely fantastic. Next up, we have Stars Fell in Alabama. It's a 1934 jazz standard composed by Frank Perkins with lyrics by Mitchell Parrish. It's been recorded by over 100 artists, and it's very diverse, right? Among them are Bing Crosby, Ella Fitzgerald, Louis Armstrong, John Coltrane, Bob Dylan, Jimmy Buffett, Billie Holiday, Dean Martin, and Doris Day. Man, you got a who's who there and different stuff on the musical spectrum. Stars Fell in Alabama. Nelson Riddle and the orchestra just killing it on this one. I'm going to have to find some of these other versions. I can't imagine anybody doing it better than Frank, but that was nice. Now we go to the only song I couldn't find anything on, No One Ever Tells You. So this is a song that was on there, put in for The Lady Is a Tramp, and maybe that's why there's not much information out there on it. But no one ever told Frank that living life basically alone was going to suck. I mean, that's basically the gist of the song. But he sounds good again, man. Nice orchestra build there towards the end to kind of bring us to the climax of that song as he holds that note. Next up, we have I Won't Dance, music by Jerome Kern that has become a jazz standard. It has 2 different sets of lyrics. This gets a little complicated, but I like to get into this stuff. The first written by Oscar Hammerstein II and Otto Harbach in 1934, and second written by Dorothy Fields, though Jimmy McHugh was also credited in 1935. They originally wrote it for the 1934 London musical Three Sisters. However, Three Sisters flopped. It was quickly forgotten. So the next year, Fields was hired to help with the music for a film version of the 1993 Kern-Harbach musical Roberta. The writing time decided to make use of I Won't Dance for the film, also named Roberta. However, Fields rewrote nearly all the lyrics, making the song more playful and suggestive by having the narrator refuse to dance because, quote, I know that music leads the way to romance. The song became such a hit, largely due to the fact that it was performed by Fred Astaire, that it is now included in all stage revivals and recordings of Roberta. Ella Fitzgerald also did it in 1961. And there's a pretty famous version of it that Lady Gaga did with Tony Bennett on Cheek to Cheek. The version of the song by Sinatra was in a scene in a movie, What Women Want, where the character Nick, played by Mel Gibson, is dancing with a coat hanger. I Won't Dance, more of the same, right? It's a broken record. I mean, they're all in the same style, and they're all fantastic. Orchestra's great. Frank's right on point. Not Gonna Dance. Told you what the song's about before we start. So let's move on to The Lonesome Road. It's a 1927 song with music by Nathaniel Shilkret and lyrics by Gene Austin, alternatively titled Lonesome Road, Look Down That Lonesome Road, and Lonesome Road Blues. It was written in a style of an African-American folk song. The lyricist and composer were both extremely popular recording artists. Gene Austin estimated he sold 80 million records, and Nathaniel Shilkret's son estimated his father sold 50 million records. That's their own estimates. There's no way to really know this. It was initially recorded in September of 1927 by Austin, accompanied by Shilkret, directing the Victor Orchestra. There have been over 200 recordings of this song, including versions by Louis Armstrong, Sister Rosetta Tharpe, the Boswell sisters, Bing Crosby, Ted Lewis, Stevie Wonder, Sam Cooke, Ace Cannon, Chris Connor, Dick Dale, and Willie Nelson. The great Bob Dylan borrowed the melody and a few lines for his song Sugar Baby on his 2001 album Love and Theft from this song. All right, Lonesome Road, the hero of this song is Nelson Riddle and the orchestra, right? I mean, that was fantastic. And Frank was just in full confidence mode, right? Look down that lonesome road. I thought that song was fantastic and one of the standouts so far on this album. That's saying something. Next up, we have At Long Last Love, another one from Cole Porter from his 1938 musical, You Never Know, where it is introduced by Clifton Webb. At Long Last Love, an interestingly written song because every single line of this song ends with a question. So Frank is questioning us with that exuding charisma, man. So it works. I don't know if it'd work for a lot of singers, right? I just don't know, man, because of kind of the way you have to deliver this song. But obviously, Old Blue Eyes makes it work. Next up, we have another Cole Porter song, You'd Be So Nice to Come Home To, from the 1943 film Something to Shout About, where it's introduced by Janet Blair and Don Amici. It's nominated for the Academy Award for Best Original Song. Didn't win, but it was nominated. I don't know about the yummy part at the end, but I know it's in the song. But just a couple verses repeated, just saying, how nice this woman would be to come home to, basically, is what we're doing there, and delivered with Frank's charisma. Next up, we got I Got It Bad, in parentheses, and That Ain't Good. It's a pop and jazz standard with music by the great Duke Ellington and lyrics by Paul Francis Webster, published all the way back in 1941. It was introduced in the musical review Jump for Joy by Ivy Anderson, who also provided the vocals for Duke Ellington and his orchestra on the single. The recordings to reach the Billboard charts in 41, 42 were by Duke Ellington, went to 13. And Benny Goodman with vocals by the great Peggy Lee went to 25. I Got It Bad, and That Ain't Good. Get a little upright bass to finish us out on that one. Frank's Got It Bad. And, My Poor Heart Is Sentimental, Not Made of Wood. I Got It Bad and Ain't Good. When the weekend's over and Monday rolls around, and like I started out just crying my heart out. So on a lot of these songs, Frank is playing the jilted lover a little bit. He's the hurt guy, man. It's actually popular for a lot of the standards that way, even though stereotypically it's always the man who's painted as the guy who hurts the woman. In a lot of these songs, that is not the case, just like in real life. Next up, we have From This Moment On. It's a 1950 popular song written by Cole Porter again, which has since become a jazz standard. It was originally written for the 1950 musical Out of This World. But director George Abbott dropped it from the musical before its Broadway premiere. You don't drop Cole, man. Arrangement-wise, that was one of the more grander ones on here, right? The brass has been spot on this whole album, but I'll get into that in a little bit. But, another fantastic song. We got 3 songs left. We got If I Had You. It's a 1928 song by Irvin King, Jimmy Campbell, and Reg Connolly with Ted Shapiro. Early hit versions in 1929 were by Rudy Valley and Al Bowley. If I Had You. One of the areas where Frank's the strongest, I think, is, the song I told you was written in 1929, but his confidence and charisma really comes to, I could do this and that if I had you. You believe him. You can just see him in your mind's eye delivering this performance. So another good one. We still got 2 tunes left because remember, we're doing the extra track. We got Oh Look at Me Now. It's a 1941 song composed by Joe Bushkin with lyrics by John DeVries. It is strongly associated with Frank, who first recorded with Tommy Dorsey and his orchestra, an arrangement by Cy Oliver. Re-recorded it for this album, obviously arranged and conducted by Nelson Riddle. When he did with Tommy Dorsey was all the way back in 1940, so 17 years before this re-recording. Oh, Look at Me Now. So Frank is playing the role of he didn't care about romance or any of that nonsense, but once he found her, he's now a Casanova. He fully embraced that and excels at it. And once again, I know I've said this through 15, but these songs just fit Frank so well, the charisma and everything. All right, now we're going to get to that bonus track that they put back in for the CD reissue. We got The Lady is a Tramp, show tune from the 1937 Rodgers and Hart musical Babes in Arms, in which it was introduced by former child star Mitzi Green. It's a spoof of New York high society and its strict etiquette and phony social pretensions. It has become a popular music standard. Early recordings from 1937 include one by Tommy Dorsey and his orchestra featuring Edith Wright on vocals. Using the film version of Pal Joey, starring Frank and Rita Hayworth. Frank sings the song to Hayworth as he tries to entice the wealthy widow into financing his dreams of owning his own nightclub. Tony Bennett and Lady Gaga recorded a version of the song for his 2011 album Duets 2. The 1955 Disney animated classic Lady and the Tramp is a play off this song's name. All right, The Lady is a Tramp Great lyrics on this to say this woman doesn't like all these traditional things, the things that you would think that someone should like. She doesn't care. She goes her own way. She doesn't care until at the end that she's poor. It doesn't matter to her because she's doing her own thing and doesn't get involved in all this superficial stuff. And like the rest of this album, I mean, Frank just delivers this song with total believability. Now we'll get to my favorite tracks. Difficult on this one. There's 16 tracks and they're all good. Honorable mentions, I guess I'll have to change my plan. If I Had You, and I Got It Bad, that ain't good. Faves are going to be The Lonesome Road, Nice Work If You Can Get It. And my favorite song on this entire album was the first track, Night and Day. That thing was a banger. Now let's get to my overall score. Like I told you, I've never listened to a Sinatra album, so I don't have anything to judge it by. But I'll tell you one thing. This thing was fantastic. The brass work on here by Nelson Riddle, the arranging, the whole orchestra was right on, but the brass really popped this thing and really amped it up from some other stuff I've heard of Frank. But Frank's the man. Like, seriously, like, he makes you believe everything that he sings. In one sense, you believe he's the everyman, so he can, like, deliver these things how he's been hurt. But on the other hand, he has all this charisma and confidence, and you believe he is the man. And so he can deliver those lines in those songs, and it's a very rare thing. And I think he was often emulated and imitated, but never matched by anyone else that I've ever heard. A lot of people call him the greatest, quote, pop singer of all time. And I think he's definitely got an argument for that. It's fantastic. So my overall score on this is going to be a sky high 8.75. I think it's fantastic. Let me know what you think of this down here. What else should I check out from Frank? I know he's got several albums that are very highly rated on a lot of different sources. And no reason why. I just have never got into his music, but kind of wanting to now. So thank you so much to Doug for bringing this one. Thank you for watching. If you haven't already, give it a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button. We don't have any more Frank up, but we got a ton of other stuff up. Until next time, guys, I will see you.